All right, first week after your midterm exam. Hopefully, it was a reasonable challenge level and you weren't super stressed out. I do plan to email your midterm grades. So, what I'll probably do is just type, okay, question one was wrong because of whatever. You lost this many points, or great work, I hadn't thought of it this way. And then I'll also post your grades on Blackboard. So this week we are doing cross price elasticity, income elasticity, Brian's topic, which is on elasticity, and then I'm going to start consumer theory. I sent you an email that I did not like your textbook chapter on consumer theory. It's all indifference curves. I love indifference curves. I think they're actually really interesting and kind of a beautiful theory, but I just don't think it's really useful. I think you guys might struggle learning it online, and I don't see how that's going to be helpful for you. So I've sent you a link to the OpenStax textbook. You'll be using chapter 6 in OpenStax. Honestly, though, if the way I teach it to you makes sense, maybe you don't even have to open that book. We'll see. All right, this is just a little review of price elasticity of demand. So again, elasticity is responsiveness. And so price elasticity of demand is how responsive is quantity demanded to changes in price. If we look along a linear demand curve here, you can see that the elasticity actually changes. And if this doesn't make sense to you, don't worry about it. But one way that I like to think about it is when we're over here, a percent change in quantity is going to be small because it's like we're already at a high quantity. And a percent change in price is going to be big because we're at a low price. So this is going to be like not a very big change in quantity demanded for a big change in price, and that's elastic. I actually always have to think this through. I don't have this memorized after how many years, so that's the way I do it. Now, what we can also do is we can think about the total revenue rule. If we're increasing quantity down here, that means we're decreasing price, right? Because of the law of demand. So as price drops, total revenue increases during the elastic portion. At the unit elastic portion, a change in price does not change total revenue. And at the inelastic portion, decreasing prices decreases total revenue. Would I ever put my cigarettes on sale? No, I would not, right? And then this is just the total revenue rule, which we went over last week. So that's one of the main takeaways from price elasticity of demand. I also just wanted to mention, I think I skipped over this last week, a perfectly inelastic demand curve says that whatever the price is, the quantity demanded is always this. Okay, so it's very, very inelastic. This is a theoretical extreme. This is not a theoretical extreme, though. This is going to come into play with perfectly competitive firms. A perfectly elastic demand curve says that if you if you increase the price at all, quantity demanded drops to zero. And if you decrease the price at all, it's irrational, because why would you do that? Because you can sell an infinite amount. When I was an undergraduate, I decided once to come up with the elasticity of Jesus. So I was Christian and I was like concerned with the demand for Jesus or something, and I thought I was so brilliant. And I remember something like, I think the supply was perfectly elastic and the demand was perfectly inelastic, and it made a cross. So I was really excited. I was very cool as an undergrad. All right, so we're doing cross-price elasticity today. Normally, I do not have people calculate this. I am going to have you guys calculate this. I think there's really good questions on Connect calculating it, and I actually think it ties everything together really nicely. So we will be calculating it this time. So cross-price elasticity measures the responsiveness of a percent change in demand for good X due to a percent change in the price of good Y. So it's two different goods. If the price of Coke increases, by how much does the quantity demanded for Pepsi change? Okay. So there's a lot of information here. First of all, the magnitude of it says how closely they're related. Like if I say the price of, I'm looking at my husband's Mac computer. If the price of a Mac computer increases, how much does the demand for grass seeds change? Well, like nothing, right? It'd be zero. But if it's a Mac computer and it's a PC computer, you would imagine the magnitude would be quite large, the absolute value. The other thing that's important is the sign. Now this is something I do think through every time, okay? So I think, okay, if the price of a Mac computer goes up, quantity demanded of a PC computer probably goes up. So that would be a positive relationship, and those two are substitutes. If it moves in opposite directions, then they are complements. So let's actually think through this one. Suppose it's estimated that the cross-price elasticity of demand between clothing and food is negative 0.18. If the price of food is projected to increase by 10%, by how much will demand for clothing change? The first thing I would think about is that sign. That's a negative sign. Does that tell you that clothing and food are substitutes or complements? The negative sign actually tells you they're complements. The next thing that you can do, and this is new to me, you can actually plug it into the equation. It's quite simple. If we've got a 10% change in the price of food, and we know the cross-price elasticity is 0.18, then this, you just do a simple algebra. You would multiply this times this. We know that the quantity demanded of clothing is going to decrease by 1.8%. Percent. Okay, so these, then I would say these two are complements. The other thing is look at that magnitude. It's really low, right? 10% change in the price of food, and it's only a 1.8% change in clothing. And so I would say that's kind of like a weak relationship. It's still interesting. All right, cross-price elasticity is important for firms selling multiple products. So if you've got like, I don't know, I think about Menards selling 2 different types of doors or something. If you change the price of one type of door, how much is the quantity demanded for the other type of door change? And then it's also important for policy, right? So we're legalizing marijuana in all these states. And if we think about what are the public health effects of legalizing marijuana, one thing that people look at is the cross-price elasticity between marijuana and alcohol. And so you can actually get data and get that information. And you have to think, well, are they substitutes or are they complements? And they actually seem to be substitutes. So legalizing marijuana, for example, tends to decrease alcohol consumption among teens. So it's an important policy thing as well. Next up, income elasticity. Measures the responsiveness of a percent change in demand for good X due to a percent change in income. Now let's think about this. If it's positive, that means if incomes increase, people buy more. That must be a normal good. If it's negative, incomes increase, people buy less. That must be an inferior good. Okay, so the sign is important, and again, the magnitude is important. Your book doesn't mention this. Some textbooks do. If you have an income elasticity that's greater than 1, we call that a superior good. That would tend to be things like so if your income increases by 1%, you buy so much more of it. Things like luxury goods might tend to be that. So let's think about this example here. The income elasticity of demand for organic potatoes is 2.26. If income is projected to decrease by 10%, what's the impact on the demand for organic potatoes? Let's think about that magnitude. That's super high, right? So it's positive and it's super big. So that would be something called a superior good. That's a normal good. Does that make sense for organic potatoes? Yeah, I think that's a normal good. So you might want to pause this and try and work this out yourself. But the answer is 22.6%. Again, you would multiply this times this to get that change. And they are normal goods. All right, there's other elasticities as well. Own advertising elasticity, cross advertising elasticity. I'm not going to test you on this. I just want you to know that this is something businesses actually calculate for themselves. Um, and I'll talk a little bit about the econometrics just to show how that might actually play out. All right, but here's probably the most difficult question of the chapter. So we're going to go through this together. For a linear demand function, we can easily compute various elasticities. So if we've got this demand function, quantity demanded of x is related to the price of x, we expect this to be a negative sign because of the law of demand. It's related to the price of y, income, and I don't know what pH is, it's not included in much here. We can see here, we could calculate the cross price elasticity. You just take the slope, so you take the coefficient on py, which is ay, and then whatever point you're interested in. So at the point py, you would calculate the quantity, and then that would give you the cross price elasticity. We really just have to go through an example here. Okay, so why don't you read through this, pause, and try and figure this out on your own. All right, so let's calculate this together. The first thing that you would need to do, and I have this on here, is you would just plug in all of the different amounts. So the price of good X is 25, so you plug in 25. Price of good Y is 35, plug that in. Average consumer income is 20,000, plug that in. And in this case, this is the advertising, 50 units of advertising, you just plug that in. So at this point, we're looking at this particular point, the quantity is always going to be 65. So let's calculate the own price elasticity of demand. That's how I abbreviate that. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the slope or the coefficient on px, so that's -3, and then you would put in, okay, at this particular point that we care about, what is the price of x? It's 25, divided by the quantity, which is 65, okay? And we get -1.15 is the elasticity. There are no units for elasticity. Sometimes people say, what is this, dollars? It's a unitless thing. But we know that the negative sign we tend to ignore among price elasticity of demand. We would know that this is an elastic good. All right, let's try the cross. Price elasticity of demand. All right, so what you'd do is you'd use that coefficient, which is a +4, okay? The price of y is 35 at this point over the quantity, which we know to be 65. All right, so the cross price elasticity is 2.15. So are these substitutes or complements? These would be substitutes. All right, income elasticity of demand. You'd look at that coefficient on income. And at first when I was doing this, you guys, I thought, oh, that's a really small coefficient. But the reason it's so small is because 20,000 is so high. The units are kind of weird put in here. So when you work this out, that's 65. When you work this out, the income elasticity is -3.08. And I forgot that negative sign here. So that is an inferior good, and it's like a really inferior good. All right. So that's the questions, or that's the answers. I'll be posting this so you can have this for practice. Last thing, elasticities for nonlinear demand functions. If you were to do this in an econometric analysis, there's this trick where you take the log of everything, and when you take the log of everything, it's called a double log functional form, your elasticity is just the coefficient. So it's, I don't know, you'll probably never need to know this, but if you were ever working in an industry and someone says, I need the advertising elasticity, you could do this trick and get it super easy. All right, so I'm going to stop here. I will post the intro to consumer theory next.